We're all good.
Can you hear me now? Just kidding. I got off the phone with Lynn and I just couldn't stop talking from England. I just thought, Victoria. I love the British accent. Anyway, I am thrilled to be here tonight and doing these 3 stories because, if I may, what? Yeah, sure. If I may just say that this was near and dear to my heart because my mother passed away and my father passed away a couple of years ago, so it was excellent, excellent story. Okay, this is called Ma. He got away, only as far as the hospital, but still, she'd been left behind. Once, she would have got into her Fiat and revved and gone up in a puff of blue smoke to find him, to catch him out in the arms of another woman, perhaps. 60 years of marriage had only heated the furious war between them. Every day she waited impatiently for me to take her to the hospital. "I have a bone to pick with you," she said when I arrived. "What bone?" "Oh, I've forgotten." He didn't want to see her. When she came shuffling in, he pretended to be asleep. "Say hello to Dad," I whispered. "Hello," he said. He was very weak, a dark, gaunt, beautiful old man, not ready to die. She settled into the armchair and sat there quite still, staring out through her milky eyes at nothing. "See, Ma," I said, "Dad says hello." "Well, why doesn't he speak up? I can hear everybody else. Why can't I hear him?" She reached over and placed a hand on his arm. "Come home, Harold," she said. "You know you're putting it on." "Will you tell her?" he rasped at me. "Will you tell that bloody woman that I've got cancer?" "Ma," I said, "Dad's got cancer. Don't be cruel." "Me cruel? Me cruel? You're the one mentioning that thing." She clawed at the arms of the chair and pushed herself forward. "Here, help me up and then take me home, please, right now." I took her out for a drive in the Fiat the next day, up the coast to our favorite beach hotel for lunch. "This way, Marmalade," I said, sheep herding her down the steps one at a time. "This way, Strawberry Jam," said the Indian waiter. "This way, Honey Bunch," he said again. She laughed. She giggled. "Go on, honey, order the prawns," she suggested. "You love prawns, don't you?" Driving back, I described the wild horses on the sea, the people selling beadwork on the beachfront. We were both happy for a moment. "Hey ho," she cried. "How old are you?" 49. "How old am I?" 87. "Really? How can I be that much older than you?" "Because you're my mother, Ma." That's a good one. "Beats cockfighting," said my father, smiling a bit when I repeated the conversation to him the next day. Every morning and evening I went alone to see him. I put on the Brock G minor and closed his door. The pneumonia was almost gone. He could go home to die if we could arrange it. "Dad," I said, "do you want to go home? I can try to deal with Ma." He pretended not to hear. A large tear rolled down his cheek as the second movement began. "I'd like some smoked salmon," he whispered. At home, my mother sat staring at the bookshelf with a glass of scotch in her hand. "I did love him so," she said. "And he seemed to love me, but what happened, I don't know. Ma, he's sick. He's in the hospital." She blew her nose furiously and wiped her eyes. "Don't you think 2 people could be happy again?" "I think they could." The next day, when I came to fetch her, she was waiting at the front door. "Has he died?" she asked. "No." "Well, thank God for that." "Wearing a hat?" "No." "Well, then nor shall I." She was the one who was meant to die first. Once she had overheard him saying to a widow, just engaged to be married, "Couldn't you have waited for me?" "That husband of mine," she said, "he was really very good to me." "Your husband is my father, Ma." "Rubbish! He's my father." The day after she claimed him as her father, he died. When I came to tell her, she was waiting as usual to be taken to the hospital. Ready? She said. I've been waiting for hours, Ma. Dad died. He just died. I sat down. She covered her eyes with a hand and breathed deeply. Finally, she said, "It's unbearable. I cannot bear it, and don't expect me to bear it." I don't expect you to bear it, Ma. I can't bear it either. She looked up as if she'd just met me at a bus stop. It's full of emptiness, this place. After the funeral, she sat in my sister's house like a refugee. The family came in one by one, veterans of the cemetery, to deliver condolences. A florist delivered an arrangement of flowers. I brought it to show her. She'd always loved flowers. In her old house, she and Pile, the gardener, had conspired together every week on which beds to plant with what, where to deploy the bulbs and seedlings he stole from the botanic gardens. "Look, Ma," I said, "you got some lovely flowers." "Really? How nice." "Here, I'll read you the card. Dear Anne, we were so sad to hear of the loss of your darling Harold. We are all thinking of you with love at this time. Peggy, Alex, and Andrew." She stared out at nowhere. "Gentiles," she said. A few days later, I stole her away from Shiva and took her to the botanic gardens for tea. "How long have I known you?" she asked. "A long time. That's what it feels like." She began to weep. "I don't know why I'm crying," she said. She groped into her bag for a tissue and then blew her nose loudly. "I know why. My father died." "Perhaps it's time to count your blessings, Ma." She looked up sharply. "That's a lot of rubbish, and you know it." "It'll be lonely without Dad to fight with, and to love. Same thing. Ma, I'm worried. You're behaving magnificently, and it doesn't suit you." She beamed. She reached out for her stone. I put it in her hand. "Now, why don't I have a daughter like you?" she said. The next one is called Not Much of a Funeral. When you got to that page in the galleys, Dad, and you looked up and said, "Didn't give me much of a funeral, did you?" I laughed. We have always understood the joke that fiction plays on life. You, me, Ma, the three of us. But oh, the joke is on me now, isn't it? Standing dry-eyed at your funeral, and Ma quite mad in the wheelchair beside me, mad or playing mad. Once she started slipping, none of us knew the difference, not even you. Standing there in the heat and damp of summer with the men chanting in Hebrew and a lawnmower somewhere, an African whistling, kikuyu grass and flamboyance and Indian minas, I could only think how ordinary it all was. 11 o'clock in the morning and people glancing at their watches. Putting that funeral on the page was more difficult. Weeping as I wrote, if I were getting it right, but I didn't get it right. Writing someone else standing at that funeral was quite different. You had known this death was coming. She had always known. I might have known too, but I refused. Year after year, Ma kept saying, "Don't leave it too long before you come back." And I didn't. Every year I came home like the fondest of lovers. We were lovers, the three of us. When you told me her mind was slipping, I changed the subject. I wanted nothing about us to slip away. But then, standing at the graveside among the mourners, I thought I must be slipping myself when Nicholas grabbed the spade, thinking it was his job as usual to do the work, and the rabbi had to stop him. Who could have thought that up? I glanced at the others for a smile, but they were crying hopelessly. They knew there's no refusing any of this. When I phoned you in the hospital from the other side of the world and asked, "Shall I come out now, Dad?" you said, "I'll let you know when." And then one day, I just said, "I'm coming on Tuesday, Dad." And you said, "Thank you." I might have known then what was coming, all the way out, plane after plane. It was as if I were flying back from the funeral already, taking with me everything I could think of, like a refugee. Our drives through the sugar cane on a Sunday afternoon, me steering. The smell of your sweat after golf, and of gum Arabic as you sat at the mirror, pasting on a beard strand by strand, and of Pond's cold cream, and of Lake Number 9, all those powders and paints lined up in the makeup tray, and your Brill cream and your Knight's Castile and light starch, only in your shirts, your clothes laid out on the divan, in your dressing room, wool, linen, cotton, everything 100%, and your dressing gowns, and your smoking jackets, your hairbrushes, your clothes brushes, and your silk cravats. Your elegance spoiled me for elegant men, Dad. Your beauty for beauty, your manners, your utter English decency. And if you were fiercely jealous of the men who came to take us away, each one of us, only we knew of this. If we told people that you bellowed and slammed doors and called us blithering, unimaginative blockheads, they thought it funny. Oh, it was funny, until you had to cope with Ma. And the bellowing didn't help, and she didn't know what you were talking about anyway, or pretended she didn't, and called you a Jekyll and Hyde, which, in a sense, you were. I put all that into the novels, too. But still, you came out less vivid than she. I seemed to give her all the best lines. Or she took them. That's the way she was. There are things I forgot, though, like the way you'd lose your voice just before opening night, and how Mom would go mad with the understudy, and you'd be swallowing raw eggs and have us whispering around the dinner table. And then every time, back it would come, the low growl, the fake purr you used on ticket ladies and usherettes, and they always gave you the best seats in the house. And once I came into your bathroom and found Nicholas brushing his beard with your special nail brush. And of course I couldn't tell you because no one but you was ever allowed to use that special nail brush, or that special pair of scissors, or that special tweezers, or that special anything. And for all I knew, he used your special linen face towel to clean the toilet. You would have laughed if you had read that in the galleys. You would have looked up and said, "Only you could have thought this up." After the funeral, one of my old lovers phoned me, the one I'd loved longer than any other. He phoned to say that he'd only just heard and how sorry he was. But I didn't recognize his voice anymore. He had to repeat his name 3 times. You would have liked that too, Dad. You loathed the sight and the sound of him, even though he was the one who told me again and again over all the years that I should hold on tight to both of you. You'd be leaving sooner than I thought. I listened when he said this. He belonged to the Shiva Kadisha. He understood how quickly a person can lock up and go away, leaving nothing behind to come home to. I listened. And really, I did understand. I have always understood, but what I couldn't bear was the thought of this now talking into nothing, nothing coming back, this horrible joke, this dead air. And the last one is called Luck. Perhaps she doesn't know what waiting is, but still, she's waiting for what's coming to us all sooner or later. And how long can it be, people ask, without any quality left to the life? Just look at her sitting there, folding and unfolding an old hanky. And if she knows the afternoon has all the charm of early summer in it, grass warmed and fragrant, sun on a lily pond, geraniums overflowing their pots, they think it's because she's fallen back to afternoons like this, waiting for the girls to come home from the beach, and Harold from golf, baby chickens with rice and gravy, and quinces and cream to follow. But she's fallen much further than that, right back to the words themselves, the lovely, lovely words, and her mother in the front row in a hat, wild with pride, and Sister Annunciation calling her in to say, "You have been given 2 talents, Annie, Michelle. Mind you use them well." Oh, she has, sister, she has. There are people who can turn a whole hall around with their happiness, and she was one of them. She stood in the wings, the words drumming along her breathing. She moved out with them into the light, into the noise, and the clapping, waiting for the silence. Oh, she was greedy for that silence. When I'm laid in earth, may my wrongs create no trouble in thy breast. Remember me, but forget my fate. Everyone here knows who she is and who she was. She gave such pleasure in her day, they say, that it should come to this. Hey ho, she sings. What do they know of pleasure? Sooner or later, they'll be stealing her words for themselves, showing off with them, wearing them around their shoulders. They'll pull out all her feathers, knock the bottom out of her jug. Some words still come smoothly to her, the ordinary ones she used to walk about with. Now, tell me again, who are you? And are you a person who's a long time here? It's really not wise, she says. And don't let them get the better of you. When there's a knock at the door, the nurse puts down her knitting and says, "Here come your daughters, Anne." "My what?" "Your daughters." "Who the devil are my daughters?" Sometimes the daughters bring flowers and put them in the vase where she can see it. "Hey," she says, "hey ho." Sometimes the daughters put on music, the lovely, 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 and she turns her head and lifts her chin, waiting. When I'm laid in earth, you sang that, Ma, they say. They take the hanky and hold her hands. "Do you know who I am?" one asks. But the lucky ring is gone, green on the little finger where it always was. "Hey," she says, "hey." Her father gave her the money for that ring when she turned 21. He gave her the money to go to London, too, although words meant nothing to him. Every week she wrote a letter to her mother, struggling with the Yiddish. Every day she took the tube and climbed the stairs, listening to the lovely, lovely, round and round, right up to her teacher's door. Then one day she walked into the gray, and there it was, her name on the banner at last. "I have babies," she says. "And it isn't easy. I can tell you it isn't easy." Sometimes the nurse takes her out into the garden on her arm. They walk with the others along the path and stop at the lily pond. And even if she knows it won't go on forever, afternoons like this, geraniums and lily ponds, still, she's ready to go home. "We're lucky," says the nurse. "I have you and you have me." But when she asks, "Where's my mother?" the nurse says, "Dead." Well, how could that be? They were just on the tram together, she and her mother, and the priest sitting in front of them. "That Michelle girl sings like an angel," said one to the other, and her mother couldn't help it, leaned forward and tapped him on the shoulder. "Min Kim! Min Kim! How many babies do you have, Ma?" "I don't have a husband. I'm quite ready to go home now." But night after night, she sees him there in the front row, just waiting to snatch her words for himself, a thief. "Who am I, Ma?" "Someone special." "But who?" "Someone marvelous." "Hello, Mrs. Poomstock. "Hello, Mrs. Marvelous." "Hello," she says. "Would you like to bring your mother round for tea? But these are your daughters, Anne," says the nurse. "Yes, and the one shows off a lot." They all laugh then, especially the show-off, always making a noise at the bottom of the table. He tried to steal her too, but she hung on tight, writing letters every day, page after page. It was the other who was like a bride to him, all beauty and manners as he led her down the aisle. Still, he was hers, night after night, with nothing between the giving and the taking, only the lovely, lovely. "When I'm laid in earth, may my wrongs create no trouble in thy breast. Don't cry, Ma. Don't cry, Anne. Your daughters will come again tomorrow. They'll be here. But I want to tell her something." "Who, Ma? What, Ma?" I want to say that she was marvelous." "Bye, Ma. Bye, Mrs. Marvelous." Thank you, Lynn, for writing a beautiful story.
Thank you so much, Victoria Goldblatt, our casting director, who is in charge of all of the wonderful acting performances, and Lynn Freed, thank you. I just want to let you know that we have 3 options for Lynn Freed. We have Reading, Writing, and Leaving Home, where the last 2 memoir pieces were in. We have The Curse of the Appropriate Man, which is her story collection, which also includes Ma, a memoir. And we have Lynn's latest novel, Servants' Quarters. Servants' Quarters is $15. And The Curse of the Appropriate Man and Reading, Writing, and Leaving Home are both $10. And both Laura and Lynn would love to sign your books for you. Thank you very much for coming. Please come back next month. Thank you.